Okay, it's time for our next breakout session. Helle redder Momsen. For the past 14 years, she's been working to accelerate the sustainable transition of our energy systems and buildings. Through Nordic Sustainable Construction, a Nordic collaboration initiative, she's leading the Nordics towards a more sustainable and competitive construction industry. One of the focus areas is how data and digitalisation can enable a decrease in the negative climate footprint from construction. Please give a warm round of applause for Helle.
Hi, alle sammen. I'm Helle, and I've been really looking forward to meet you all and engage and share what we are doing together in Nordic Sustainable Construction. Yes, I am leading this, but I'm doing this together with a lot of really good colleagues across all the Nordic countries. So I'll tell you a bit about a vision that it all began with. So back in 2019, in Iceland, as we already heard earlier today, the Nordic ministers and presidents and larger CEOs came together and made this our Nordic Vision. So by 2030, and this was in 2019, we should be the most integrated and sustainable region in the world. So that's quite a vision. But to be able to do that, I think we all know construction will have to have a transition and have to change our practices. So at that time, Nordic ministers of housing and construction came together a bit later in 2019 and made the first declaration focusing on low carbon and circular principles in the construction sector. That was then reconfirmed in 2023 with a new declaration, which you can't read it all here, but I plucked out some of them. And especially the second one, you see harmonizing relevant regulation, methods, data, and tools, and etc. So they pinpointed different areas that all the Nordic countries should work together on to accelerate our transition in the construction sector. So to be able to do some of these things and actually have a change in real life and the construction on the ground or the buildings we already have, the Nordic Sustainable Construction program was established. So that was back in 2021. The first declaration was in 2019. And the purpose of Nordic Sustainable Construction is really to support the Nordic Vision and to make the Nordic countries a leading region in sustainable, competitive construction and housing with a minimized environmental and climate impact. So that's what we're working towards, and we've done that since 2021 until the end of last year with these 5 work packages. It's a lot of people, it's a lot of efforts we have done, and I cannot explain it all. What I will mainly share with you today is what we have done in work package 1, which was focusing on harmonizing the LCA or the life cycle assessments. I think you all know that we need a lot of data to be able to do that, and that can be burdensome, so how to do it more efficiently, more competitive. The work package was run by the Ministry of Environment in Finland, and each of the work packages were run by different Nordic stakeholders. It's very linked to the governments and the regulation being placed there. I personally is from the Danish Authority of Social Services and Housing. So just that you understand the links. So if you open this work package, what we did was all of this, all these 5 tasks. And I will mainly share with you what we did in task 2 and especially task 3, because I think it's relevant for all the work that you are doing. Just a little, why are we talking about all this data and the need to accelerate it? It's because of this regulation where Sweden were the first to say that you have to calculate how much climate impact there is from your new construction. Then came Norway just after, saying you have to do it as well. And this is a bit of what you see on this overview. Then came Denmark in 2023, January, where they said, yes, you have to calculate, but there's also a limit to how much you can emit per square meter per year. This has been in place since 2023, and it will be tightened in July this year, where we will divide that limit to 7 different kinds of building typologies and on a downward trend. And maybe what's really interesting is that you can see that all the Nordic countries and Estonia are working on this, so the regulation is coming. And for those part of the EU, in 2028, buildings larger than 1,000 square meters will have to calculate. And in 2030, you have to make a roadmap saying how your limits will be implemented and more or less how they will be. So it's coming. I think you all, I don't know, but this graph is really showing the different stages in the life cycle. And then it's quite different from country to country until now, which stages you include. And of course, that means a lot for the calculation. So that's part of what we've been talking a lot about together, because it can be easier for the industry that works across borders if it's more aligned. Yeah. So when we want to do all of this, when you're a regulator, you do not want to make burdens. On the other hand, you do want to change the way things are working. So sometimes regulation and burdens are needed. But we want to make it as efficient as possible. And that's where we really need this data, and we need a way to handle them. So can digitalisation help? We know that this regulation, when you calculate all the different things in your building, and I know it depends from each building what is in your classification model and how deep you go into the different parts in the building, but you really need a way to handle it. And the tightened limit value makes it even more, like the limit to how much CO2 you can emit, makes it even more important that you can do that calculation fast. So we think that the digitalization can help, and that's why we wanted to have a deep dive into how do we define data, how do we define the different data scenarios in different ways, both new buildings, but also just even CO2 emissions from trees or scrubs, how do you calculate that? And of course also data for old buildings. So we made a big report on that with a lot of really good data specialists from across the Nordic countries and Estonia. And you can find it in our knowledge center. Another task, that was task 3, we thought, okay, is there ways that is already there that maybe we can help come further along to motivate a more efficient way of calculating? That's where BIM for LCA came in. And we had a project focusing specifically on that. It was run by different stakeholders and consultants across the Nordic countries. I'll show a slide later. But the aim was really to see what can we together do to make it more efficient. So there's different stages when you have when you want to make this life cycle assessment. You have the conceptual design, then you have the developed design, then you have the technical design, and the construction and handover. And you have different models for that depending on whatever tool you are using. But there are some constraints when you use BIM for building LCA. Is the information correct? Sometimes when you just had the presentation about the teamwork, when you take information from one part of the value chain to the next, sometimes things get lost, and there can be a lack of interoperability between whatever BIM model you have and the LCA software. So there is really a need for more general calculation rules when you have the building LCA. Each country is doing their regulation on that and setting it up. I know it's also been worked a lot in here in Norway, but across all the European countries, this is a process now ongoing. So right now, these are the different steps we see and the project saw when you have a BIM model and then you want to do your LCA calculation. And these are some of the things that happens when you need to take it from one step to the next. Maybe you don't calculate the building exactly the same way. maybe the LCA models differs. Maybe there's some missing knowledge or information that then that person puts in themselves. Then when you transfer the model, maybe it's not transferred well. Maybe there's some materials and products you don't have the specific data on. And as you pointed out before, of course, a project always changes a lot along the life cycle. So how to make sure that all these data are updated. So a BIM-based building LCA process sometimes goes like this with the different systems. There's many systems, there are many ways of doing it. Well, we wanted to develop a BIM model that was freely accessible so that the industry could also learn. What we really do not want is that people are left behind. We wanted to make sure that the market could be on top of this regulation that either is or is coming. So it's really a tool that is needed, but of course there's a lot of extra software tools that can help this process. Yeah, so this is some of the different steps and what the different parts of the models can do and how it can help you when you want to calculate your LCA. And the IFC model, of course, all these different data need to be able to talk together, and in the different Nordic countries we use different kind of data models, but with the IFC model it's more easy to have this interoperability of the data needed. Yeah, and I think it links well with your presentation from last time. Communication is really a key to success. One of the things we talk a lot about in the construction industry to really reduce or whatever kind of footprint, carbon or materials or biodiversity, you really need to have very good collaboration across the whole value chain. Because maybe the architects and conceptual design had one idea, but then you hit the ground and new ideas come up, or maybe the prices of things have suddenly changed significantly and you have to change. So this way of collaborating and have a strong communication methods together is really essential. When the project was done and it was launched last year, and I think it was September, this report and all the information, we saw that there is when you need to do all these steps from a BIM to do your LCA calculation, there are different steps, and we didn't get all the way. So the focus in the report that you can find online and that I've tried to explain to you now is that we have enabled the material takeoff for LCA. So just as you know all the price of all the things you have in your construction, then there's also the price for LCA and some of the methods of getting it in. But of course, there's parts of depends on the country, but for instance in Denmark, we calculate the part of the LCA that's called B6, so that's the energy, and you don't always have that in BIM, so there's still a bit of manual work. But I can see today there's a lot of stakeholders. I know there's a lot of BIM conferences around the world. I participated in some of them, so I think it's really great that the industry know that we need your active thinking and the IA you talked about earlier today to really accelerate these solutions, because there is a need for data and we will need to know how to handle it, and we need the smartest systems to be able to do that. But of course, also very secure systems. That's not less important these days, unfortunately. Yeah, so I talked about we made 2 BIM models, so one in concrete and one in wood. And you see all the different files that you can find online. It's all available because it's a Nordic collaboration. So it's made with money from the Nordic Council of Ministers. And then we're very engaged also with the understanding of how to use these tools. So we made different YouTube training videos. So if you know architect students or someone in your office or someone that wants to play with it, then yeah, we made it all available. We got quite good feedback on them, so I think they're worth a look. Of course, each company is in different stage of the transition, but at least we're proud of them. Yes, and these were some of the stakeholders who were part of all this knowledge and all the gathering. The Nordic LCA authorities have been guiding it and quality assuring it, but they were mainly doing the work, and I'm spreading the word. Yeah, so this is a summary of the results. So really, there will be a need for more data. we're especially focusing on new construction. I don't know what will happen with the existing buildings, but this is a topic that is getting more and more hot. We want that guideline, and we have at least steps towards a guideline for BIM. And then there's the pathways towards automated BIM-based LCAs. Yeah. So I just told you a little bit of work package 1, and we've worked on a lot of different topics that is needed to actually achieve that Nordic declaration that I showed bits of you, or pieces of you, pieces of the declaration in the beginning of my presentation. So if you're interested in some of these topics, you find much more information here. We did quite a big work trying to get the information out, but there's many different pockets in the construction sector. So if there's any of it that's relevant, please dig into it. There's anything from heavy reports to webinars and slides. So I told you that the Nordic Sustainable Construction run from the end of 2021 to the end of 2024. So it's actually finished. Just still sharing the knowledge we created, because luckily it's still relevant. But we are applying, so this is all the Nordic construction regulators, the Nordic Council of Ministers, for a new period to collaborate. We got part of the way, but there's a few things we still want to collaborate on. We don't know if it will be possible, but if it will, these are the things we would like to collaborate further on. So on the climate, you see LCA make the implementation of climate regulation more efficient. For sure, the data and the tools that you are providing is an important part of it. We think it's really important that the industry and the market do their share and help with defining and developing the solutions. We are not always experts in IT software development, so we're very happy that you're there to provide those solutions, but we will need them. And then for circularity, we need to look into how we use the existing building stock more efficiently. I don't know how many of you work with Eurocodes, but they are being updated at the moment, and we also want to have a look into them. And then for the EU, there's a new commission. There's a huge focus on the housing sector, and there's also a huge focus on so many things with data and digitalisation, digital product passport, material passport, the EU building stock observatory, and then the energy performance of building directive that is very much discussed these days and have a lot of demands on data as well. So we hope that we can collaborate more on this, and then we hope that you will engage with some of the work, and maybe you will actually be developing some of the solutions needed, or maybe you have specific challenges on the ground that we don't always understand or know of, then we're actually really eager to hear them. Yes, so that was it for me. So if you want to stay updated, we have a newsletter, and we're on LinkedIn and all of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Helle, for a very interesting overview of what we're actually able to do across the Nordics. We have time for a couple of questions, and I do have a couple of questions for you. So in the tech and AI domain, we very often hear that this AI Act from the European Union is a limitation for innovation. Now, you talked a bit about the regulation around LCA. To which extent do you think that that regulation is a hindrance for innovation, or is it a driver for innovation? What are your thoughts?
What we see is that when we put the demand on how much CO2 you can emit per square meter per year, or just even the calculation, like anything, when you start measuring it, you get aware of what are your footprints actually. We still have some cases we don't know. In Oslo, you're really good at the fossil-free or emission-free construction site, so you have some numbers, but it's hard to know what your impact is if you don't calculate it. And that awareness suddenly makes new collaboration processes, but of course also products and tools and different kind of materials, a lot about design, more interesting, and there's suddenly a demand to grasp it and to start looking into it. So what we see is for sure that the LCA regulation it's a huge innovator. And we also see some competition. It's not long ago I was lucky to be in Tokyo, and they are also discussing a lot. Actually, the metropolitan city of Tokyo is implementing LCA regulation. So there's a competition who can do it smartly. So there's a huge innovation opportunity.
I like that. It sounds good. But, well, talking about competition, so if we think about the Nordic collaboration moving forward, what do you think we should collaborate on, like next step within digital technologies?
There's a lot. I think it's good that you gather here. There's a lot of other places where you gather. I don't know how you combine all of those knowledge and those different agendas. But I think it's very important to meet and discuss. And at least from the regulatory part, we know that some data, we don't just want to ask people to report to have data. We need to know how to use them. We need not to make data graveyards. We need to make them secure. There's a lot of things. It's not easy. But we really need your expertise in how to make the best tools and put it to the market, big stakeholders, small stakeholders, and everything in between. So really to collaborate on how we get better at using the data in an efficient way. I think it's a good way. That's a good thing. But then also the existing building stock is, as I mentioned before, it's we talked a lot about new buildings, and I'm not saying that it's easy to construct a new building. This huge building and the statistics and fire regulation and indoor lighting and all of those demands that doesn't just fit harmoniously together. It's not easy, but we need to have another focus on existing building stock and how to utilize it better to make it affordable and some kind of better or greener.
Thank you very much, Helle. Please give her a warm round of applause.
Thank you.